All right, hello everyone. It is May 19th, so been starting to get a lot of agronomy calls, spraying beans. What should I be looking for out in the winter wheat? So I thought maybe it'd be good to put a video together, just talk a lot of different things that Shannon and I are seeing out in the field today. We just pretty much are wrapping up spring seed season. A lot of guys just got done last week. In our trials here, the spring wheat to my right and the chickpeas to my left, those were seeded on April 9th, kind of before we had the two big rains. At the time, I was wondering if that was the wrong decision, because stuff seemed like it took about 3 weeks for everything to come up, but pulse crop's extremely clean, great stand on the spring wheat. I want to introduce Macy Smith. Macy, you came to work for us in February. A lot of the seed packets, pretty much all the seed packets in the spring trials this year, she was down in, we call it the dungeon at Midtown, but she spent a lot of hours down there treating seed, doing seed counts, and making packets for the trials. I think you helped seed maybe 6 trials this spring. She just graduated from the U of I. Feel like we're pretty lucky to have her. She's going to be a great one. And Macy, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, I have roots in both Grangeville and Colton. I grew up in Colton. My dad was the superintendent there for 14 years, I believe, and then we moved back to Grangeville. My family's all from the prairie, so it's good to be back in the area and recognize a lot of faces. It's always good.
What did you study in college?
I graduated last weekend with a bachelor's in ag economics and minors in crop science and soil science, and crop management. 2 summers ago, I had an internship down outside of Caldwell with Valley Agronomics. I had an agronomy internship there, worked in a lot of potatoes, onions, and sugar beets. And then this last summer, I was with Ag West Farm Credit in Lewiston. I was a credit analyst intern and did a project on machinery costs and how that impacts farm profitability. So I'm excited to be here at P&W.
Yeah. No, we're very lucky to have her. I know yesterday, Macy, you rode on the back of the four-wheeler. I think we rode about 1,000 acres of field south of Genesee. Yeah, we're trying to expose her to as much stuff as we can. I think Shannon, Nutriscan, I think this afternoon, Macy's, we're going to send her some pins. She's going to go out and start doing some Nutriscan tissues. So anyway, we're excited that you chose to come work for us this summer. We hope, we kind of did the same thing with Sophie last year. Sophie was a great intern, and then we had a position for her in the fall. And hopefully, Macy, you like P&W, and you want to make the Palouse your home at the end of the summer. So
I'm excited to be here.
All right. All right, Shannon, you're holding a winter wheat plant. I think it just came out of our variety strip trials in the back here. I know the first video that we did, I believe it was the end of March, but we're really talking about addressing, mostly micro deficiencies at herbicide timing. I think we ended up spraying that trial 5 weeks ago. Yep. So maybe just say what you're seeing now.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So the winter wheat trial behind us, last fall we put 110 pounds of nitrogen on it. And our approach, like we talked about in earlier videos, was to just feed it as we need it. That's an advantage we have with the Nutriscan, is to feed it as it needs it. And so we started with 110 pounds, and then we were going to apply it as it needed it based on tissue samples. Now this early spring, with it being warmer and drier, before we got all that moisture, we decided not to top dress it just based on that. And I'm still glad we didn't. We have 8 ranges in this trial where we looked at different foliar applications, and in a few of those treatments we included a few gallons of nitrogen at that herbicide timing. And so we're going to get a really good difference on that fertility application at that herbicide timing. But we are under fertilized. I started seeing about late jointing, early flag leaf, that we were starting to run low on nitrogen. I took a tissue sample just right before this video, and we were right at 3.5%. You can actually see a little bit of that yellowing in the trial, especially in the higher higher yielding varieties. There is a little bit of a nitrogen shortage. I think we probably lost bushels because of that. But just because of this trial and those fertility applications, we're going to leave it alone for the rest of the season. As we start getting into flag leaf applications, I know a lot of guys are starting to put an airplane up Kyle's gonna cover aphid pressure and stripe rust. And that's one thing we're gonna look at is what the NutriScan is showing, some micros that we can apply and correct at that flag leaf timing and what that looks like in our approach moving forward.
Yeah, I've been out. So you get on the Genesee Rim. I know you get west of Colfax, probably the Pullman Rim. You know, the wheat's probably 80% headed. As you move north of Genesee, we probably won't see wheat headed out for probably another 2 weeks. The wheat on the rim, I think I ran out there on Friday. You know, a lot of growers around here were spraying their winter wheat that, you know, around April, anywhere started April 1st through about the 20th of April. Once again, Shannon, we didn't have a lot of good spray days. We had a lot of freezing nights. Of course, we had a lot of rain. Shannon mentioned we're under fertilized. You know, we really can only make that decision, you know, in the fall when we're putting down that base fertility package. Once again, we are coming out of a pretty severe drought. We talked about it in the last video, but this creek was pretty much drying up. You know, our deeper submoisture profile was pretty much bone dry. So, you know, we really didn't want to over fertilize the crop, grow a lot of foliage, and then, you know, they keep saying we're supposed to have a warm, dry summer with the El Nino that's pretty much in place now. We haven't seen it. I think we're, you know, I'm a little chilly out here. I think it's about 50 degrees. I think a low this morning back here was 33, so we didn't freeze, but we were awfully close. Anyway, out on the rim, so that wheat was probably been, you know, 5 to 6 weeks since I had that fungicide application. We knew rust was in the area. In fact, I think some areas, you know, we had late fall infection. A lot of this rust was overwintering. We had some red weed out there. I looked at it. It was pretty easy to find. Typically, when I walk out into a wheat field, I'll go out maybe a couple hundred feet, kneel down, kind of open the canopy and start looking. I think on Friday, Shannon, I could find, you know, a dozen plants that had active rust, you know, kneeling down in one spot. Probably the biggest thing was aphid. I was shocked how many aphid are down low in the canopy. They're really on this second leaf is where you're gonna find them. You know, this first leaf starting to senesce, about right here. If you open that canopy up, that's where you're gonna see them. In fact, this leaf right here, I don't know if you meant to or not, there's actually 3 aphid on it. So 22 was really the only year that I've seen in my career where I've seen aphid impact winter wheat. We were coming off of COVID. You couldn't find an insecticide. I think a lot of those actives come out of China maybe, but it was a rust year. I think every farmer around Genesee sprayed their winter wheat for rust, but you couldn't find an insecticide. We had a seed treat trial just to the west of us behind the camera. It was pretty evident that the pressure was, you know, was the highest I'd ever seen. Real warm, mild winter, really similar to this. And then a cooler, wetter spring. Anyway, I made a insecticide treatment. I think it was just Warrior on the front and back range, did not spray the middle range, and we picked up 25 bushel with that insecticide application. I know a lot of fields that year, especially in the draw bottoms, north sides, where that wheat was maybe, you know, hung on a little longer. I know a lot of guys commented that year. They felt they probably lost 3 pounds of test weight and probably 20, 30 bushel on their yield. So I don't know if we're gonna get there this year. I do know this is probably the most bugs I've seen in a long time. Last couple years, we couldn't even find aphid in the winter wheat. So they're out there, just really want to make guys aware of it. If you are going to put an airplane in the air, make sure you have that insecticide package. My opinion, systemic like that methoate's probably the best. I think on label you can go up to 3/4 of a pint, so 12 ounces. You're going to get 2.5 weeks out of that probably. That's probably going to do it, especially if you're spraying, you know, right when that head's emerging or right before it's flowering. That would be the most ideal time. And then that's probably going to take you to soft dough, and by then the aphid are probably going to, you know, I don't think there's going to be a chance for that many aphid coming back in, getting that weed infected. So take a look at that on stripe rust. You know, on the red wheat out there, you could just tell that it was on the cusp of kind of blowing up. I think that farmer, he ended up getting an order in the airplane and they got it sprayed last weekend. I was going out and shine encore fields, much better. But when I'd go out and kind of sit down, pick a spot, you know, instead of finding a dozen, 15 leaves, I could find 3 or 4. Some of that was actually active rust. So, you know, a lot of these varieties like our Trident, Shine, Encore, Sockeye, that'd be one maybe to keep an eye on. I think Stingray, I'd probably just pull the trigger and get it sprayed. But, you know, none of those varieties are gonna blow up, but they're just gonna gradually get worse and worse and worse. And we kind of saw that in our strip trial back here 2 years ago. I think Shannon, just a regular microp application. On Shine, we were still picking up 10 bushel at that flag leaf application. So nutrition-wise, Shannon, if they're gonna, you know, I know the aerial applicator here, I think he has 7,000 or 8,000 acres on the books last time I talked to him. So guys are starting to spray the wheat. Tremendous potential. I guess, is there anything nutrition-wise we're short on in? I mean, do we address that?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you're putting an airplane up for stripe rust, and like you talked about, a lot of these varieties have pretty good resistance, but, you know, it's the middle of May and we're wearing hoodies and a vest, and, you know, it looks like the rest of May is staying pretty cool. And so even on resistant varieties like Shine, it's just going to continue to grow. And so if that airplane's going in the air with the fungicide, I do think there's some things we could look to correct as far as nutritional. Just throughout the season, up till herbicide, timing, tillering, and then jointing, really our main deficiencies were that potassium, zinc, manganese, boron, little bit of nitrogen here and there, but nitrogen was pretty good at those early stages. That's really where we look to place our Ignite blend, which contains that potassium, zinc, manganese, boron, plus those biostimulants, and that's fit really well. Looking at flag leaf timing now, as we're pushing ahead, you know, that potassium demand for the plant really goes down. You don't need all that potassium reserve anymore. And so really we're looking at those micros. I think maintaining potassium levels is good because you still want that water movement through the plant, pushing those nutrients and promoting that head fill and good grain fill. And so we want to continue to maintain those potassium levels, but I think we could look to correct like those zinc and boron deficiencies. And then again, talking about biostimulants again, I think that's a huge player. You talked about them, you know, the forecast is talking hot and dry, late summer. You know, if we get into June and it gets really hot and dry and there's some stress on that wheat crop as it tries to fill ahead, that's really where we're going to see that benefit from that biostimulant. Having that seaweed extract in there, that really helps abiotic stress tolerance, and then that carbon source is really going to help that plant withstand those stressful conditions if it does get hot and dry. And again, we just want to promote good head fill. We have a lot of potential in our winter wheat crop right now, and so we really want to finish strong. And so, you know, I think if that airplane's going up, you have those 12 ounces of dimethoate, maybe a good fungicide to get you to that point, maybe consider throwing in a half rate of Ignite or correcting those zinc and boron deficiencies. I think that's really what we're looking to correct. There is some guys, you know, like I said, we're not going to address the nitrogen in this trial, but if you're going out there, call me, I'll take a tissue sample. If you are short in nitrogen, that's when we could put a few gallons of urea on, you know, with that micro blend, really promote that finish. We have a lot of potential. We have pretty good sub-moisture. If we catch a rain shower or two, I just think it's going to make for a really good finish for a high potential crop.
I think over the weekend we picked up about 1/10 of an inch, so we kind of missed it. I know talking to a couple growers up by Moscow, they were 3/10. Josh Kellenhofer, he said up Garfield area, some of those guys picked up a 1/2 inch.
That's a huge rain.
Oh,
yeah.
huge
Makes
rain.
a lot of bushels. No,
Looks like last weekend of May might ruin some camping trips for some of the campers. I think you're going camping in the woods. We might just stay at home and watch it rain, hopefully, but sounds like pretty good chance of rain this coming week. Really looking at AccuWeather for like the month of June. I mean, I think we're really only going to stay in that mid 70s is kind of going to be the highs till we get to the end of June. Then we're probably going to bump up into the mid to high 80s, which is probably good. With that in mind, a variety like Shine or Encore, a lot of guys have been calling, what do I do? You know, they have really good H-tap, but it's probably going to be that 75, 80 before it kicks in. So, you're not going to go out there and have your pant legs turn orange if you walk out into your shine field. But what you're going to see, you know, if you go out there every 4 days, it's just, you're going to see a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. I think the big thing is to be proactive. The fly boys are going to be busy. It's maybe good to get your name on the list sooner than later. If you do have a variety that's prone to rust, all the coaxium varieties, including Nova, I'd probably get those sprayed. Of course, the hard reds, our Jet Scorpio or Straight Jet, watch those. Stingray, that would be one in our trials. We've seen it, a really good response. It can get pretty rusty, so look at our Mariner blend. Sockeye is really good, or I should say it's a lot better than Piranha. But once again, Sockeye is going to be one of those. It's probably going to respond. Bounty, we actually have Bounty as our checks on the borders. Last time we had trial, it was Magic, and I think the yield was completely half the unsprayed check with 2 applications of my crop. So anyway, that kind of give you what to look for. If you guys have questions though, give me a call, or Shannon or one of the field staff, and it will kind of help guys. And we'll come out and take a look too if you're concerned. But I think the big thing, Shannon, if we're going to put the plane in the air, what we learned in 22, make sure you throw that insecticide in. I think, you know, once the wheat starts to flower, we start getting off label for like a group 7, you know, something that's longer lasting on the fungicide. So that's where, you know, if you're going to pull the trigger, kind of do it before then. You know, maybe step up if you have a variety that's more prone to rust, like a mycrop or a Nexicor, something that's going to get you that, you know, 3 to 4 weeks protection.
No, I totally agree, Kyle. You know, trying to get that fungicide out there earlier, one of these mycrop or Nexicor where you're going to get that longer coverage, really got to get that application on there before that wheat's headed out according to the label restrictions. So as we transition to spring wheat, we're starting to get calls for guys making that herbicide timing spring wheat application. Kyle, what's your outlook for stripe rust on spring wheat varieties like Bush and Ryan and some of these spring wheat varieties?
So, you know, on Bush, you know, I think we put out 65,000 acres of Bush this spring. A lot of Bush went out. It's a great variety. If I was a farmer, that would be my #1 choice. Always thought it had a really good stripe rust package. And then Zhang Ming Chen sent out the rust forecast, I believe, in March. And he had Bush rated a 3, which isn't great. He had Ryan rated a 1. And so I was pretty confused. I called Mike Humphreys. I said, Mike, what do we need to be looking at for Bush? You know, is it going to get rusty? He said the last year they had really bad stripe rust. In his breeding trials, Bush ended up picking up some rust, but Ryan was actually way worse, what he thought. So I think with Ryan on a bad stripe rust year, Shannon, we've kind of had that in our trials. In our foliar trials, we've always used Ryan. I think in 22, we picked up 10, 12 bushel with that flag leaf application with Ryan. The last 3 years, though, we didn't really see anything. So I think my approach at herbicide timing, I've had a couple of these calls too. Do I step up, run a Nexicor or a mycrop, or do you think I'm good with 4 ounces of Propy? I think, I don't know. You know, hindsight's 2020. It's just like the winter wheat back here. If we knew we were going to get 7 inches of rain in the month of March and April, we probably would have put another 40 pounds in on this trial this spring, address that. But, you know, I would definitely add something when you're spraying herbicide. Once again, I think Bush is maybe a little better than Ryan. Maybe Ryan, you step up and you do buy that Nexicor or maybe the mycrop, and then, you know, Bush or Tico. Tico's pretty much bulletproof, same with Seahawk. I know we didn't sell a lot of those 2 varieties, are kind of going out, but that's kind of the approach I would take.
Yeah. No, I've started taking tissue samples on spring wheat, and I was in the field of actually DNS this early week, and I was counting up to 15 tillers on some of these spring wheat plants. So I think we have a lot of potential with our spring wheat. It's growing quick. I think if we can catch a few rain showers, it's still going to be really a high producing spring wheat. So I think I'm in the boat of trying to protect that yield. You know, you could put a propiconazole on there for, you know, $2, or you could, you know, move up to like a mycrop where you get that 30, 40 days of coverage and it's about $4. So still really good protection. I think either way you go, just having something out there to kill what's on the plant and then to give a little bit of a preventative to stripe rust is going to be a good move. Like I said, starting to take tissue samples on spring wheat. DNS, my approach is a little bit different this year. You know, we got 9303 and Hale blend as our primary DNS blend on quite a few acres. And my approach, you know, Hale picks up quite a bit of PLS or Ceph stripe, but trying to address that PLS deficiency. It's a chloride deficiency. And so my approach is, you know, maybe put Ignite out there, or some potash out there where you get that chloride boost early spring, and hopefully that can carry you through. I know last year, even being warmer and drier, high stress, we were seeing quite a bit of PLS. And so as far as tissue samples, it's going to be potassium, zinc, manganese, and boron again. Pretty typical of our wheat. Like I said, we saw it early with herbicide. Last year, that was kind of the trends. And so that's what we're going to look to correct throughout the season. As far as white wheat, and again, I'm just starting to take spring wheat tissue samples, but if the trends are similar to last year, it's going to be those main four. One, to keep potassium levels up, maybe correct those micros, and then we always try to keep those biostimulants in there for that stress factor.
I think aphid, spring wheat, you know, in my 30-year career, we've sprayed spring wheat a lot of years. Typically what happens, you know, we'll start getting that aphid buildup in the winter wheat by around mid-June. So this year it's about a month early. But, you know, when that winter wheat starts to dry down, you know, starts to get hard dough stage, those aphid are flying out, hitting the spring wheat, and that's where we'll usually have to pull the trigger if it's a bad aphid year. So I think, you know, throwing an insecticide in that early herbicide application, I don't know, maybe. I think the big thing, you know, we just got to really watch it. You know, it's probably going to be the end of June. If we turn off hot and dry, you know, we're probably okay. If we stay a little cooler, pick up some rains, you know, we might have to address that. Of course, at that time, we'll maybe have a better idea, you know, how bush is reacting with rust. Same with Ryan. So, last, we really want to talk about pulse crops. These chickpeas we seeded at the same time as the spring wheat. Just makes it a lot easier to seed this block of trials back here. So these were seeded April 9th. Like I said, they took forever to come out of the ground. I was really beginning to wonder if I made the right decision, Shannon. We kind of pushed the envelope there. They look great now. Cannot find any Ascochyta. You know, I have not seen live Ascochyta around Genesee area for the last 2 years. I'm going to be really surprised if we see it again this year. So I think as we get out there, start looking, you know, if we start seeing a problem, that's, you know, we'll let you guys know and we'll address it. But right now, I think we're probably free and clear. These garbs are in the 9th node, looking really good. One thing nice about getting, I think these had 1.4 inches of rain on it since I seeded it. That might have been the first rain, and then you add another half on top of that, maybe 2 inches. I can't find a weed out there. So this had ounce of Valor, 2 ounces of Sharpen, and 4 ounces of Metribuzin, the dry granular. Weed control's excellent. I'll probably have to make a clethodim application. There's a few oats, a little bit of volunteer weed out there. I'll probably do that in about 10 days, 2 weeks. Kind of like you guys, farmers, it seems like you can be out here spraying something every day, trying to stay ahead of it. I think at that time, Shannon, we'll look at plant nutrition, maybe a fungicide if picking up a little bit of Ascochyta. I guess, you know, we saw some pretty good results last year with the Max-In for beans. The tissue sampling didn't work as good, the tissue gun, but you can talk a little bit about that, what you saw last year.
Sure. Yeah, so as far as tissue sampling in the beans, again, this technology, the NutriScan, is out of Canada, so it has a lot of data points on canola and winter wheat, and that's what we saw last year. All of our NutriScan custom applications showed really good ROIs in wheat and canola. Chickpeas, we didn't see a very good response. We made the custom applications, and they're actually almost at the bottom of the trial. Yeah. We lost some dollars on that negative ROI, and I just think there isn't the data points yet and that's what we're looking to build up. I think there's still a value there in the future, but we really don't manage chickpeas to the point that we manage wheat or canola. In the meantime, we've used Maxin for beans for 2 years now. This is the 3rd season. Always seen a really good response.
Yeah.
It responds really well to it. We try to place it as close to bloom as we can. I know I'm starting to get phone calls on spraying clethodim and chickpeas. We're really trying to hold off to about that 13th node. So I think we have another week or so, but to make that clethodim application, at that point we can throw in Maxin for beans or that nutritional package, really boost that plant. I know the last few years you talked on Ascochyta, we really haven't seen that blight pressure. Yeah. Don't really have any overwintering spores. I don't think either one of us expect to have much pressure in our chickpeas. I know last year we had a few growers, you know, it was hot and dry, a little bit different growing conditions, but we had a few growers electing to put a nutritional package on there rather than a fungicide. And I think it's still good to have that fungicide on there just for plant health and for that disease protection in case we do get some pressure. Like an Everlon or Preaxer we really like. It's pretty affordable versus like a Miravis Top or those higher end fungicides. But you have that SDHI, which is really good at controlling that blight infection if we do get some. But then it also has that Strobe fungicide, which is really where you get your plant health. And so I think that's my focus, is putting, you know, Everlon on there around that 13th node when you're putting that clethodim application on, and then throwing in Maxin for beans. We've always seen a really good ROI the last 2 years. At that bloom timing, we've picked up about 220 pounds. And so pretty cheap application, pretty easy to make your money back and some. Always seen a good ROI. Kyle, you talked about seed dates. I'm just going to mention that for a second. Working mostly out of that Pullman region. We had some guys that pushed the envelope, put them in real early. It was cold, soil temps were cold. Took a while to come out, but they're pretty clean beans because of it. Got those rain showers, activated that chemistries. Now the later seeded beans, you know, they're a little bit weedier, going to have some pressure without that activation. Going to probably take a tough application. What's your thoughts on that this season, Kyle?
Yeah, for sure. And tough's been, you know, I think we got it 5 years ago was when I think might not even been released that year, but we got a couple jugs, started playing with it in trials. Totally different formulation from when we had that product in the 90s. Back then it was a clay-based product. Very lumpy in the bottom of the jug. You'd have to actually run it through a cheesecloth or plug the filters on a sprayer. And then we lost it for what, 20 years. So really glad to have it back. It's really nice to have something out there to use as a post-emerge. I think the key is getting the weeds when they're little, Shannon. Running as much volume as you can, running as much pressure as you can. 20 gallons is better than 15. If you can get your sprayer up to 80 PSI, run it at 80 PSI. A lot of MSO. Anything though, little lamb's quarter, pretty easy to knock out. We ended up using quite a bit of tough back here last year. Pretty good results. Any lamb's quarter that was more than about 4 inches tall though, that's when you started missing them. The big one's mustard. A couple of the chickpea fields I rode yesterday. One was a later seeded field, kind of missed the rains like you alluded to, Shannon. Maybe we haven't got the rain yet to get that pre-emerge chemistries activated. Going after mustard, the one field I rode, I had a lot. If there was enough out there, it was going to be an issue. Tough's not going to touch it as a standalone. Just will not get mustard or canola. We had a couple guys last year that did some stuff just experimenting, but 12 ounces of tough, 2 ounces of metribuzin, smoked the mustard. Once again, you gotta get it when it's really little. Sencor by itself will kill garbs. I've seen it back before we had tough, you know, when you had those fields that blew up with weeds. You know, you're trying to do anything under the sun to get those knocked out. Usually we didn't kill the weeds, but we killed the garbs. So tough in there, acts as that safener. You really want to pull the MSO out though. Probably want to buffer the waters, so run some AMS, but once again, run those higher rates. Really try to get that mustard, you know, it can maybe be past that cotyledon stage, but you want those true leaves to probably be silver dollar size or smaller, and that metribuzin will do a pretty good job. Lentils, kind of saw the same thing. You know, we put out a lot of our new Clearfield lentils this spring. Of course, there you have the option to run them beyond. If you look in the compendium, we had pretty good trial here. kind of showed what herbicide packages work the best, and then the corresponding yield to that. But same on lentils. If you got mustard, which a lot of guys do, that's becoming one of our biggest weed issues on the Palouse. Probably got to run that metribuzin with the tough. I think last year, Shannon, the best results we saw was 8 ounces of tough, 3 ounces of metribuzin. Once again, just probably run some AMS. You could put a little bit of NIS in there too, I think, on the lentils. You're probably going to see some bleaching, so the smaller you can do that with the lentils, the quicker they're going to grow through that. Really effective on lamb's quarter, but once again, you know, weed size is so critical. So the longer you wait, you know, you're just going to miss a lot of those weeds. So, you know, if you just got done seeding garbs, lentils within the last 10 days, I know, you know, like Josh said, they got a 1/2 inch up there. That's going to, you know, do a pretty good job getting your chemistry activated. If you kind of miss that rain, like right here in Genesee, you know, we have garbs out of the ground that really haven't had a rain since they made the pre-emerge. So I know there's going to be some tough being applied. But other than that, anything you want to add?
Sure, to wrap up, you know, this trial right next to us is 9th node. Typically, if it's pretty warm, we're putting on a node every 2 to 3 days. Right now it's about 50 degrees, so it's going to be quite a bit slower than that. We're probably looking about 5 days per node. You know, without active axicata blight, or we're not expecting that blight pressure this year, we're not going to have to do that late season application. So that's why we really want to wait till about that 13th node. But from here on out, you know, you can make that clethodim application about the 13th node. If you need to spray some tough, you can spray some tough or spot spray some tough out. Throw in that nutritional package or fungicide, and then we're probably going to be pretty good for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and that's you know, if you have to go out and make a clethodim application and a tough application on your beans or your lentils, definitely keep those separate. I would hit the broadleaves first, get those knocked out. Most of them are probably up now. Maybe if we get another 1/2 inch rain this coming weekend, it might bring a few more, but you know, I would be proactive if you got pulses in and you kind of miss these last rains, and then give it about 10 days, 2 weeks before you come back and make that clethodim application. So, you know, be it the chickpeas or the lentils, I wouldn't combine them, especially on the lentils. You'd probably kill your lentils. So canola, real quick, looks awesome. We've got strip trial with canola back here. It was starting to get chewed on. Shannon, I think you came out and made a bifenture application last week, just in the cod leading stage. The field to the south, it's canola. It was actually seeded after the trial. I've been watching it, haven't seen the bugs move in. Seems like it's been really hit and miss. Who's had to worry about flea leaf beetle? A lot of growers are going out making that first Roundup application. Once again, I really like going out early with 22 ounces, about right now. Make sure you throw in that insecticide, be it Lambicide, Warrior, or Bifenture. And then if we get more rain like we are, you know, the end of May, that's probably going to bring some more weeds. You know, and that gives you that flexibility of coming back in with that second 22 ounce application. That's where we really like to try to wait till about rosette stage on canola. You can come in, make that application. That's where maybe run the vine and veg, run that bifenture, maybe throw that fungicide in if you want to. And then really you're about good. I know some growers take different approaches, maybe doing that early Roundup application of 44 ounces and then coming back and spraying in the first bloom. But
right. As far as vine and veg goes, and most growers are familiar with it, we've had it in the program for about 5 years now, have a lot of data on it. It's been on a lot of acres commercially. Growers have seen as good of responses as we have in the trials. Yeah. Typically we see about a 10% yield boost. So for growers growing about 1 ton canola, typically we're seeing about 200-pound yield increase. Pretty cheap application. It takes about 30 pounds of yield increase to pay for that product, and we're usually seeing about 150 to 200 pounds. So really good input. Again, we've had it on a lot of acres in the last few years. It's a micro package of nitrogen, zinc, manganese, boron, and calcium. I think putting it with that Roundup application at rosette stage is really where we've seen that benefit. For one, nutritionally, having it closer to bloom to support those pollination and blooms and try to make that plant bloom as long as possible and hold on to those blooms. But also we've seen a pretty unique effect where it really helps with our Roundup application. In the past, we've seen with that Roundup application, it delays that bloom, that canola bloom. Jack Brown used to always say 1 week delay in that canola blooming is 250 pounds or 5 bushels. And so our goal is to get that plant blooming as early as possible and as long as possible. And we've seen that effect with vine and veg, having it with the Roundup. It just allows that plant to metabolize that Roundup application a little bit better and bloom right through that, or start to bloom right through that Roundup.
Overall, crops look amazing this year, Shannon. If you would have told me 2 months ago this is what we'd be looking at, I think we'd maybe changed our approach on a few things. But kind of the crops are off to the races. You know, just like last year, we pretty much grew last year's crop on our winter moisture. This year, we're about 4 inches ahead where we were last year. So definitely, you know, way more moisture in the profile than we had a year ago. One thing that really saved the crop last year, we had a cool June, or cooler June. Looks like, so far what I can see, June's kind of looking like it's going to be similar. So ton of potential out there. You know, if we can catch a couple rains, that would just be, you know, this time of year, every inch of rain adds about 7 bushel of yield. So I think we're fertilizing this for about 110 bushel wheat crop. As dry as it was, it's probably going to go 130, but we're going to miss that 150, 160 that this ground can do. So still going to be a heck of a crop. And luckily, you know, commodity prices are slowly creeping up. I know fertilizer though, diesel, Shannon, I bought a diesel pickup a month ago, and I wonder if I need to go see a shrink. So I don't know why I buy a diesel pickup when the price of diesel's over $5 a gallon, but anyway, it'll come back down. It's got to.
It will. Well, that about sums it up. This is just kind of an agronomy update. We're going to try to do another 1 or 2 of these throughout the growing season, really just to give updates on what we're seeing in the field and in the trials. Really appreciate your guys' business this spring. Appreciate you guys watching this video, and we look forward to working with you this summer.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.